All right, welcome everybody to the October 7th, 2025 meeting of the Singlex Multiplex Housing Technical Advisory Group. See the agenda ahead of you. Justin, if we could take a attendance.
All right, it looks like we're a little light at the moment, but we've got some people trickling in. But here's the roll call. Roger Haring.
I am here.
Dan Young. I'm not seeing in the room at the moment. John Hall. Not seeing in the room. Joe Mayo. Not seeing in the room. Andy Lorenz. Not in the room. David Kinley.
Present.
Okay. Jeremy Moore. Not seen in the room. Jonathan Goldsmith. Not in the room. Robert Baglio. Not seen in the room. Michael Wright. Not seen in the room. Jesse Bank. Not in the room. Shweta Sinha. Not in the room. Mike Messer.
I'm here.
Thank you. David Lynham.
I'm here.
Thank you. Rich Geisky.
I'm here.
Thank you. Spencer Gardner. Not seen online. Richard Williams.
I'm here.
Thank you. Derek Weigel. Not seen online. John Sue.
Here.
All right. And with that, we are 2 seats shy of a quorum.
Hey, Dustin, this is Andy Lorenz. I didn't know if you've seen me log in.
Gotcha. I got Andy. And then I had one other one show up. Jeremy Moore is here as well.
Yes,
with that,
I am present. I apologize for
no
being
worries, it's all right. We're still sitting a little bit shy of a quorum. We're 1 seat shy right now. And I'll continue to monitor names, and if we get a quorum, I'll let the group know.
All right. Theoretically, I believe we need to have a quorum to review and approve the agenda and the minutes.
Yes.
So
And the minutes I don't have ready for this meeting today.
I thought there was a September 23rd minutes.
I may be messing it up. I put a folder on my desktop and I didn't have the minutes in there. If they're posted for the meeting, I'd pull them up real quick.
Okay. Let's ask if there's anybody from the public that would like to introduce themselves, and we'll kind of double check on official tag members.
Okay.
Patrick, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Patrick Ardell.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ardell Jalla. I'm the building official for Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections.
And Elizabeth.
Yeah, Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Looking through, nobody jumps out at me that is a member, but then I don't have the list memorized either. Are we still short of a quorum?
Still, we got Derek Weigel here. I think that Derek puts us right at quorum, and let me just double check that. Yes, so with Derek here, we've got quorum now.
All right. Then if we can jump to agenda item number 2, review and approve the agenda. If I could have a motion to approve the agenda, a motion and a second, and then we will have any discussion.
So moved.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I heard John Sue make a motion.
Second.
Derek seconded it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. The minutes.
Okay, we do have those. It's my
Yes.
apologies.
So if I could have a motion, well, go ahead and flip through that so it's in the record.
There we are.
From September 23rd meeting. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes in a second, and then if we can have discussion?
Move to approve minutes, Chance Yu.
Thanks, John.
Second, Richard Williams.
Thanks, Richard. Are there any comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from September 23rd, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the minutes pass. Let's see, so this gets us to agenda item number 4.
Which is single exit work.
Yes. And Ardell, if you would like to continue working through the spreadsheet. Just so Dustin, we have the fire department, right? Those were the big one that we were going to try to hit at this meeting.
Yes, and sprinkler requirements, and mainly all like fire department and sprinkler stuff for this one. So, and we wanted to kind of breach the emergency egress and rescue openings as well. Today is what we had planned, and we're not, stuck on this plan, but this is what we had planned for today.
Thanks. So Ardell, if you would.
Sure,
You could
I can, but I think Dustin,
continue
can you
us
please
through, and
bring
I
up?
think let's.
Great.
Are we, so we're looking for the spreadsheet and then also what we have here as far as the code baseline document. Do we need anything else for the presentation here?
I'm not sure if Mike Messer, did you submit any of those language changes to SBCC and Dustin?
Yeah, I just sent over a fire alarm recommendation sheet. And then when you come to professional fire department, the fire group has a pretty good idea of 6 items that we'd want to include, but we need to formalize the language. So we're definitely prepared to talk through the conceptual side of that.
Okay, so this is the document I just got from Mike right here. And do we want to run over this right now or continue on with our baseline?
I think we should go ahead and go through it. This is something that we were waiting on, and I think it touches a lot of outstanding topics. So I think that we should go through it.
Okay.
And Mike, are you prepared to be the driver of this?
Oh, absolutely. So
All right.
we've had a lot of conversation over the last numerous meetings about what type of fire alarm system to put in. And I want to say 2 meetings ago for this in particular topic, I was really seeing a lot of confusion on the difference between fire alarm system, manual fire alarm system, smoke detection versus smoke alarm. So we really tried to break out our fire alarm requirements the same way the International Fire Code and International Building Codes in Chapter 9 break out the requirements. And I do want to send a quick shout out to Chris Russell, who's on the fire alarm industry side, that gave us a really good thorough review, and some of the blue is part of that review. Needless to say, things work out really well on paper, but you want to make sure they're buildable in the 3D environment. So he was able to double check what we were asking for is doable. And certainly if there is anything that sticks out as a design issue on his side. So moving right into it, we're calling these our Group R2 SEMH housing. So we are asking for a manual fire alarm system. So a manual fire alarm system by definition is a system that has a pull station. We're also asking for occupant notification. So that's your horn strobes and low pressure sounders in your sleeping areas and all the other fun stuff that actually alerts occupants to a fire or another emergency going on in the building. And that's all in compliance with section 9075, so existing code. Automatic smoke detection is also required. Just so everyone knows, there is a difference between smoke detection and smoke alarms. So a smoke detector in and of itself only detects and then sends a signal to a fire alarm control panel, which then activates your occupant notification system. Your smoke alarm is what you have in your house. So those can be single station or multi-station, meaning you have one that's a standalone, or you have one that's interconnected with other smoke alarms. But a smoke alarm is your dual function device. So not only does it sense smoke, it also sounds an alarm to let occupants know that it's time to evacuate. So getting back into the first section, now that we've got the definitions out of the way, an automatic smoke detection system that activates the occupant notification system in accordance with 907.5 shall be provided in accordance with section 1.2 of this document. So we do have some exceptions. One, we're falling back on NFPA 72 as our standard locations. But the exceptions that we're also leaning to, which is typically existing code language, is first off, manual fire alarm boxes are not required in sprinkler buildings when following conditions are met. We are asking for a full 13 system in these buildings. So that's your condition A. Condition B, notification appliances will activate upon sprinkler water flow. The reason we're asking for occupant notification is this is one of those cases where we're closing a gap that's in base code. Base code only requires water flow monitoring on that fire alarm panel. So in base code, there is no fire alarm system required. We are asking for that there is no notification required. So we are asking for that to be closed, and this fire alarm panel is monitoring not only sprinkler water flow, but it's also monitoring that one pool station, and it all initiates the occupant notification system throughout the building. And then finally, that one pool station gets to be put at an approved location. Every jurisdiction calls out a different approved location. On the fire side, what we found is false alarms become a real issue, especially when it comes to draining down our resources. So the International Fire Code recognizes numerous code cycles back, and in sprinklers allows the one pool station to be put in an approved location, whether it's public access or not. The reality is, for most jurisdictions, we ask for those to be put in a private area, such as a sprinkler riser room, and it's used more for testing than it is for occupant use. So that's a couple of things that we're relying on to activate this system is one, your smoke detectors, and then two, a sprinkler pop, which would initiate the water flow. Moving down into automatic smoke detection. Automatic smoke detection systems shall be installed throughout the following locations. And the locations are subject to change with other areas of the code. But we are saying that if we have common space outside of dwelling units, we want them in those common spaces. If this group decides that we're not building common space in these buildings, it comes off the table. We'll make this match. Number two, same deal, laundry rooms, mechanical equipment rooms, and storage rooms outside of dwelling units. We do want smoke detection in. Again, if that changes in other portions of this code, we'll bring the fire alarm requirements to match. And then finally, all interior corridors serving dwelling units. Last line, single and multi-station smoke alarms shall be installed throughout in accordance with 907.211, which should already be base code. And those are your dual purpose. I sense smoke and I activate it in unit alarm. Any questions on those first two areas?
John, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for putting this together. Couple questions. One, just to be clear, if we have exterior stairs or exterior egress balconies, exit balconies, those do not require the automatic smoke detection?
Correct. So exterior would not work, and for the obvious reasons, you have airflow to where smoke would typically not accumulate to set the alarm off.
Okay.
So it would be there, but it would serve no life safety purpose.
Right, sure. So, and then the other thing is, are these intended to be written as amendments to the fire code, or are these going to be inserted into the appendix?
This would be inserted into the appendix. So what we did is we did take it as a fire code and kept the language the same. And in fact, we pulled a lot of this out of our R2 dormitories, if it looks familiar, which is one of the deals that brings it above what base code requires. But we did want to write it in the same fashion as the Fire and Building Code Chapter 9s appear. So any code enforcement agency throughout the state would very easily recognize what the requirements are in that same order.
Okay. Just as a comment then, since we're in the IRC appendix, group R2 is not going to be defined, right? The IRC doesn't have the
This
groups.
is single family. This should be building code, correct?
Pardon?
This is a multiplex, it's IRC.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. This is the single exit. Never mind. My fault.
No,
Getting
you're
me mixed
good,
up.
buddy.
You're not the first person, John. Are there other questions?
And then I do have a little bit more after you get through the questions down on the bottom, one more line.
Let's take a few. Okay, there is only one more line.
Well, two more lines.
Okay. Well, go.
I'm sorry, I shot a little early before I sent it over to Dustin. A lot of the commenting you're seeing is from Chris Russell, who helped us out significantly. I was trying to go through and remove the comments before sending it to the group, but nevertheless, comments are valuable.
Okay.
So the black on the second page is the next set of requirements. Required smoke alarms in dwelling units and R2 SEMH occupancies may be interconnected with the fire alarm system in accordance with NFPA 72. So what we're saying is that your smoke alarms either can or cannot, based on your local jurisdiction, be connected into the building's total fire alarm system. Reaching back to John, I think John and some of the other building folks on here brought up a couple issues with false alarms. And on the fire side, we totally get the false alarm side as well, to where we're now giving it back to the jurisdiction on whether or not they want the in-unit alarms to interconnect out. And then there is one more line down at the bottom. All right. And then habitable spaces and dwelling units and R2 SEMH occupancy shall be provided with visible alarm notification. Visible alarm shall be activated by the in-room smoke alarm and the building fire alarm system. And then you can see my comment highlighted, which FPE is fire protection engineer, making sure this is possible and it's something that is done. So we do want our habitable spaces in those groups to have visible alarm systems. One of the issues we have in the industry, and I see Chris Russell up, he's probably even better to explain, is with low pressure sounders and UL compliance. So we do have some issues there. So we're taking that back to visible alarms that are activated by in-room. And then vice versa, if the building system goes off, the in-room notification goes off as well. So with that, I am done.
Okay. Marcus, do you want to go ahead? Do you want Chris to clarify anything first, or?
Yeah, Chris, if you had stuff to clarify or add, go ahead first, and I can ask my question because mine, I think, is related back to the first level.
Thank you. Mike did a really good job of going over that. I was just going to say on the second page, if you could scroll up a little bit, Dustin, to the top of the second page. The black text where I crossed out the A1171, that was a mistake. That should be not crossed out. So it should be in accordance with the A1171 and NFPA 72.
Okay. All right. Marcus, then would you like to?
Yeah. My question, and Mike, can you, I think it's on the first page, and I think you mentioned something in the kind of first section of text that you said would be ameliorating or kind of going beyond the base code. And I just wanted could you repeat what that is and what the rationale for that was? I think it might have been 1B if I remember correctly, but I might have heard that incorrectly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is something we've written into our city code along with other jurisdictions. When you look at fire code, you've got sections that specify where fire alarms are required. And within that, there's other requirements. You have automatic smoke detection, and you also have occupant notification. So there are several occupancies that are already out there in base code to where there's a gap and you actually have a fire alarm system that's required to be installed, but there is no occupant notification. So essentially the brain, the fire alarm control panels there but it's only there to monitor the sprinkler system. So you have a sprinkler head pop in one part of the building, the brain gets the signal, they send it out, fire department shows up, but nobody else in the building knows what's going on because occupant notification, the horn strobes, are not installed. So where this goes above and beyond base code is we're asking for occupant notification to be installed. So when you have, let's say second floor apartment number 4 has a sprinkler activation, everybody knows there's a fire emergency in the building and to go ahead and get out. So that's the above base code. The other part that I'll just kind of reemphasize on it too is several jurisdictions, including my own, have written that same requirement into city ordinance to where if a fire alarm system is required, we require wholesale occupant notification as well.
Okay, so just to be, so then it's beyond base code, but do you think it's, but you're saying that maybe a lot of jurisdictions already do this? I guess the question, where this ask comes from is like, would an apartment building or a group R2 building that is not a single exit building that had 2 stairs and had separation be required to do what you're saying would be added to this appendix here? Or would the appendix for a generally smaller apartment building be requiring something that is higher than an apartment building that is larger with more units?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna pull up my fire code so I don't lead you wrong, but I want to say if memory serves in 907 for group R2, it's 16 units, and then there's another requirement in there that I'm not thinking of. Might be it might be greater than 16 units, greater than 3 stories that are required. I'm looking at as we speak. I'll go ahead and tell you in a lot of ways I can be like Rain Man, but it's too much to remember, so I keep my code book close.
Mm-hmm.
Ken or Mike, are you still looking for your?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
I'm
just going to
almost there,
help.
but I'm pretty sure it's 16 units greater than 3
Yeah.
stories is R2 occupant notification requirement.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to help out to Marcus. So this is the same requirements if you look at group R2 college and university buildings. That's where it's called out for an automatic smoke detection system. So that's where the language, I believe what they're proposing is coming from. They're just adding in the single exit multi-housing to that section. I think they're not actually doing that, but that's where I think all this language is coming from. That it matches up perfectly.
Yep, and Ken's correct. It does come from group R2 dormitories. And Marcus, just circling back with you, the code line is 907291, manual fire alarm systems, and occupant notification is required for any of the following conditions apply. Any dwelling unit, sleeping unit located 3 or more stories above lowest level of exit discharge. Any dwelling unit or sleeping unit located more than 1 story below the highest level of exit discharge of exits serving the dwelling or sleeping unit. And then finally, the building contains more than 16 units or sleeping units. So pretty close.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So it sounds like it's just kind of aligning with already happens in that section, just making it clear within the appendix text. Okay.
And do the whole meal deal anyways. So base code at that point would take over.
You broke up a little bit at the beginning of that, Mike.
Oh, no problem. I was just saying through, and this is speaking probably more on behalf of my builder friends out there that I talk to. When you write code like this, they typically don't go halfway. You're not going to see a builder or developer come in and invest in doing a single exit at 4 stories or 5 stories. My assumption would be they're going to go the full 6 unless something in planning and zoning prevents them to. So once you hit above 4 stories, some of our fire alarm requirements do kick in. What we are trying to do is make sure that irregardless of how the single exits are built, the occupant notification is there and the set standard for the requirement.
Okay. Ardell?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So the manual fire alarm system section is already a requirement in 907-291, and this is a repeat of 907-291. So there's no add here, or is there, is the item not fewer than one manual fire alarm box is installed at an approved location? Is that what is different than base code in item 1?
So in item 1, the add is notification system. So the manual fire alarm system is already going to be requiring these buildings because they are sprinklered. But the manual fire alarm system in base code would only serve to monitor water flow. So the add for that section 1 is occupant notification system. The remainder of it are the exemptions that you would get in base code.
Okay, and one thing that I wanted, Ardell, did that answer your question, or you?
I'm just struggling on on whether when this gets inserted into the appendix, what the add of that second sentence in item 1, Mike, is if you have the section below of automatic smoke detection, are those two
I see what
separate
you're saying. So an automatic
things?
smoke detection system that activates occupant notification system shall be provided in the following section. So you're
Yeah.
saying we could eliminate that because it goes without saying that if we have automatic smoke detection, it's going to activate occupant notification?
Well, yeah, or you state it in the automatic smoke detection section. Like there's two separate
Yeah.
provisions, and I'm happy to share screen if this.
Well, no, I'm with
if you're tracking that, does that make sense? It's like this
Yeah, no.
first section is around manual fire alarm.
Yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
and
The
that
second is
matches model
synonymous.
code except for item 1C. So 1A and B are the same as 907-291 exception 2.
Right, but you got to remember, if you're taking these out of the fire code is written for R2 dormitories. So that's where we're taking our language from, is we're applying R2 dormitory to R2
But that's
single exit.
which I agree with, but we're talking about R2. We're not talking about R2 dormitories for the manual fire alarm system. We're talking about R2 dormitories for the automatic smoke detection. R2 dormitories, it's just all R2 in I-907-291, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
so
it's
if you got
any of
something
the
you want to
following
screen share or put
conditions.
up, I was tracking
Yeah.
with you on the second sentence for automatic smoke detection, that it's assumed that if it's installed, it's going to activate the occupant notification. But now you're kind of losing me what you're looking for.
Yeah. I don't know,
Ardell,
Dustin.
do you want to show
Is it
share your
okay?
screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Dustin.
You'd be able to go now.
Okay. And if this is something that needs to move
Well,
off to a
Ardell,
separate
while
meeting, that's
you're,
fine.
Oh, keep going, because it's gonna help me out too, Ardell.
Okay.
I was going to
promise,
say,
look at Roger scratching his head. He's exactly how I feel right now.
well, I don't know much of anything about the fire code, so being a structural engineer, but I just wanted to say two things. I believe we have not necessarily been doing this, but as when we have a final product, I think it's going to be important for this group, for me anyway, as I present it to the full council or to the public, that we have a list of enhancements. Like, okay, we said a single exit, you can go up to 3 stories. Now we're going up to 6. Have we added any enhancements that we think are critical in order to make that step? So I think as we go through this, kind of the conversation, the question that Ardell had about what is base code and what is not base code is important. I'm going to want to know, are we asking for something in addition, and enhancements over the base code? And the second item is, this is going into the building code. And I am not a code expert either, but I feel like, do we have to be pulling more or less information from the fire code into this appendix? And maybe Ardell, that's a question that you've had answered. You continue to, is it mentioned at the beginning, at the top, maybe? But again, just let's be clear that it's fire code, not building code. Does that mean we can or can't rely on the base code more stringent?
The base code still applies. This
Right.
does not supersede the base code unless it specifically states. So what this says at the start is, sorry, that's not the proposal.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. So in addition, and if this is where we need to say, like, in addition to the fire code provisions, I'm just trying to pull Mike's language into this. Like, what would that look like within the appendix to correlate, right?
Yeah.
And if you took a section and made it, sorry, 10, 11, 9, 10, 11, one is manual fire alarm system. The next is automatic smoke detection. And then another section on smoke alarms. What is already in the base code? And so this is the language excluding what's highlighted in yellow. A manual fire alarm system that activates occupant notification shall be provided. And what I'm trying to figure out is, and I don't know if you guys could see this. Can you see my code up right now?
Yes.
Okay. So 907-291 is a manual fire alarm system that activates occupant notification, is in group R2, where any of the following conditions. So it's not only where it's more than 16 dwelling units. You can trigger it under any of it. And the first one is any dwelling unit is located 3 or more stories above the lowest level of exit discharge. Well, this is a single exit. We're already at a 4-story or higher building. So we should already be getting the manual fire alarm system out of the base code. And item 2 says, as an exception, it's not required where sprinkled throughout with a full 13 or 13R, and occupant notification automatically activates through the notification zones upon a sprinkler water flow. So if I look then, and I'm sorry, I'm not great at putting things side by side on this size screen. This first sentence is identical to what's in the R charging language for manual fire alarm system. The exception is the same and leaves out the 13R exception. This part is the same, but this is a delta. This is an additional criteria to the exception.
No, that comes out at 907.2. It's 907.2.
Is it in there? Okay.
Yeah, if you go up to 907.2, you'll see it in the second paragraph, Ardell. Sorry for butting in.
No, please do, because I'm just trying to track what's 907.2.
Yeah,
all the way up here?
907.2. Yep, all the way at the top, 907.2, where required new buildings and structures, second. There you go. Second paragraph, not fewer than one, right there.
Okay. So I think what Mike, you said is that the add is the occupant notification system. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's the occupant notification, and thank you for explaining that. I think that's one of the things that's been very confusing, whether it's this or multiplex, is that we're dealing with a very small section of code to where nobody's going to build the occupancy up to a 3-story. And you're right, base code, once we hit that 4-story or larger, it takes over. So really, to the group, where we proposed any of these, first off, any language that makes life easier for the group or for a code official, the fire group is for. But I also just wanted to bring in some of the reason why we wrote it the way we did is to set the expectation of what the building gets irregardless of how it's built, if that makes any sense. And I think that's where the confusion is coming from. Does that kind of capture what you're saying, Ardell, with base code
Yeah.
versus the additional ask?
Yep, it does.
Because
Thank you.
you're 100% right. Where it becomes more additional throughout the building process is 1 to 3 stories. So I totally get it. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. Can I move over to Patrick, who's been waiting waiting patiently?
Thank you. I have a question, Mike. If for the occupant notification system, if like say somebody's cooking in one unit and they leave something in their oven a little too long, creates some smoke, the smoke alarm goes off. Is that going to trigger an alarm in other units, or is it only for if the sprinkler goes off?
Yeah, so if you look at the bottom of the page to where it says required smoke alarms in dwelling units in group R2 may be interconnected, that's actually where we've made the shift from shall be to may be interconnected for your exact deal. And I want to say John brought it up in the past where we were talking about burnt popcorn. And if you look at our not necessarily R2, but our R1, our hotel motel, the classic burnt popcorn on the 6th floor, and you get 3 engines and a ladder. So what we wanted to do was shift that to the jurisdiction by writing it as a may versus a shall.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I've had some instances like that in my own building, and I feel like it ends up just kind of making people get immune to the alarm system because you just assume that it's a false alarm. And I think that actually makes fire safety worse than not. So thank you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I comment to that too. So I came out of operations on a ladder truck in a high-rise area, and 2 a.m. false alarms drains down your resources to where you're taking one ladder truck that might be serving an entire battalion or even city, and now it's committed to a false alarm because of burnt popcorn. And then what Patrick mentioned is something we see on the prevention side of learned behaviors. If you go through too many false alarms, then it's kind of like crying wolf. People start to ignore the alarm. So we recognize that, and we want to turn that back over to the jurisdiction, so the fire code official, building official, fire chief, to make that determination for their community.
Okay, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, some clarification for Patrick's question. Yeah, the single station, multi-station smoke alarms, or if you're using smoke detectors in their place, they should be programmed so that they only activate the in-unit detection, and then on building detection, like a water flow, then that would activate every unit. But they should be reporting a supervisory if they're connected to the fire alarm, and they shouldn't be activating the whole building if it's just an in-unit trigger. And then to Ardell's question of the structure, I was working under the impression that this is going to be a separate section, and then I was trying to structure it so that it was similar to like 90726 or 90728, where they do require a manual fire alarm system up front, and then with some additional automatic detection as a separate section. I'm sure, like Mike said, if it would be easier to understand in a different format, that's not a problem. I was just trying to keep it in the same structure as the existing IBC, IFC sections.
That makes sense. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
John.
Just one other thing though. And forgive me if I'm mixing up multiplex with single exit again, but I think we were having discussions about how many units per floor were we going to allow, and we wanted to say, well, could you have more, units per floor on a shorter building? So that's where, if we go down that road, that's where maybe we won't hit the 3. Maybe you'll have a 3-story building with this kind of single exit in it, with maybe 6 units on the 3rd story, and then that's where maybe this would be more useful. Right. It may not just be all 3 stories are automatically going to use the base code provisions.
Cool deal.
Good question, and I believe that is still a topic to be determined. Is that right, Dustin?
I believe so.
Yeah, we've been discussing it. So, you know, we
Yeah.
can't. My point is just we can't dismiss this out of hand.
Okay. Fair enough. Ken.
I wasn't trying to dismiss it. I was just trying to incorporate it.
I just kind of want to put the bow on this for Roger, is that Ardell brought up all of the code requirements that are existing code now for these type of occupancies. The only thing that is that addition or that plus that you were talking about to allow the single exits is the automatic smoke detection. That's what's not in the base code now for an R2 occupancy. It's only in the base code now for a group R2 college and university building. So that's the additional ask to allow the single exit. And I'm hoping that's clear now. Thank you.
And yes, those are the kinds of things, and it's very reasonable. To, you know, you're doing it for dorms. Although whether this is only an R2 apartment has been, somebody's asked for us to reconsider that. So that's farther down in the discussion. So, okay. Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. I also just wanted to clarify that the required smoke alarms of dwelling units that may be interconnected or the visual notification, that's all covered under the base code already, and is only required when you have hearing impaired or people who request communication features. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I believe that we've come to Ken's summary was a very good one. What I believe we've got to do is to take this information, and not everybody had the chance to look through this. So can we have a plan? Well, or should we now try to go back to our baseline document and make modifications to our baseline document, given the conversations that we've just had?
Yeah, absolutely, from fire.
Okay.
So
And
the one
there is-
difference, there is a difference there. And it's the item 8D from the baseline document that's appears to have been dropped in this version. And then the other difference is, and you guys can tell me it's whether it's the same or not, but 8 was previously written as an automatic smoke and fire detection system, and item 1.2 is now written as an automatic smoke detection system.
Yep. What we did is we realigned that original language to what is actually written in the code. So
Okay.
you'll never find in the IBC or IFC an automatic smoke and fire detection system. So we want to make sure those aligned.
Okay.
I was going to say, for all the code folks on here, one of my favorite convoluted sayings is that the code is what it is not. And what I certainly didn't want at least fire to get into is rewriting or redefining code.
Okay, so going back to Ardell's question about all main floor landings of interior and exterior exit stairways is still outstanding as should it be left in, because you're saying, Ardell, it is not covered in the document on the left?
No, and Chris might have this on the top of his head, but there is actually an exemption for notification appliances in exit stairways, and I can't remember where it is. He pointed it out. I went over it the other day. Irregardless, there is an exterior horn strobe and a sprinkler water flow device that's going to be on these buildings. So we're following the exemption that's in the code. I say, Chris, is there anything you want to add to that, or did I say that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. it's 907.5.2.3. That's for visible alarms that have the exception for visible alarm notification not being required in exits is defined by chapter 2. So you don't want the audible or visible notification in the exits because one, the firefighters don't like it because they're trying to fight the fire in there, and two, it causes confusion for people exiting the building because they've already been directed to the exit and need additional notification.
So I'm hearing that item D should be taken out.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so then are we,
I think it's a wholesale replacement of the language in the proposal with item 8. That's the way I've been reading this. Is that the intent, Mike?
Yeah, it's a repeal replace. We're repealing
Yep.
what we originally said and replacing the language.
okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And this should all replace number 8 in there, kind of like you were showing earlier, Ardell.
Yeah, so I've got it as like 9, 10, and 11 in what I think is the intent here. Replaces item 8. And there's some language in here that's, sort of a repeat of what would be requirements out of base code, but that's okay. And then there's additional, which is the automatic smoke detection in as was previously indicated in item 8.
Rich,
So I think maybe if I can summarize, Mike, just see if I'm picking up on what you're laying down here. So if we build one of these buildings, it's going to be fire sprinklered. And because it's fire sprinklered, they only need to have one manual pull station located in an approved location, as long as that sprinkler system turns the bells and strobes off in the building. In addition, the common spaces outside of the dwelling units will have fire alarm devices to detect smoke and also trip the occupant notification, so the occupants can start moving to the exits more quickly when there's a fire in the corridor versus waiting for the heat to activate the fire sprinkler system. And then if you have a requirement for visual notification inside the units by the local smokes, hey, you're burning your toast, quickly do something before you tell the whole building you're burning your toast. Those can be intertied or not, depending on the local jurisdiction. Would that be a quick summary for the layperson?
Yes, it sounds like you're 100% accurate as I listen to you go through. And then you got to remember, like Chris was saying, your single station, multi-station alarms should show as a supervisory regardless on your FACP if they're activated. So it's the difference between supervisory and general alarm.
Yep. So it's kind of a 3-tier response. You get your local smokes inside your unit for when you're doing something silly. You get a chance to respond. If you fail to respond, or if you open your door, either the smokes in the corridor will go off or you'll activate the fire sprinkler system, both which will tell all your neighbors you burned your kitchen down and get us rolling.
Yep.
okay, John.
So I'm going to go back, Mike, a little bit to my original question, although I've reformulated it. The Group R2 SEM, do we really need to name that? I mean,
Yeah, I struck it.
That's kind of a term begging a definition.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We can take that out. That was actually in there for my benefit.
Okay.
So we can certainly take that out and align it with the rest of the language in the appendices.
Okay. Yeah, we can wordsmith that later. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't something that was absolutely necessary. And then the other thing, Dustin, as you're going there, I'm wondering if we still need the kind of the same vein. Do we need the smoke alarm section? Because this smoke alarm section is definitely something that we're not doing anything different, right? So I would hope everybody knows that you need a smoke alarm in the units, right? So, do we really
But the
need to?
visible alarm, isn't that a different thing? Isn't that an ad? The visible alarm activated by the in-room smoke alarm and the building fire alarm?
Yeah, he's talking about the single multi-station requirement. I think
Yeah.
what we have is the ability to interconnect with the FACP or not. That would be different from.
Sorry, you're breaking
So-
up, Mike.
Each section that requires an occupancy, or each occupancy section for a fire alarm requirement has its own header for smoke alarms when they're required in that occupancy, which is why we included those under this.
Well, I think this is only for R2 apartments, right? That's still.
Currently, although I wanted everybody to be aware, there's been a suggestion by somebody that we expand that. And I was unclear the best way to address that question. I'm not sure if she is on. Yeah, I don't see it. Go ahead. I'm not sure if we should try to tackle that now.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Just understanding that's there, but under the current proposal,
Yes.
We're only talking R2 apartments, and so I think it would be pretty clear that they're going to have, the single station.
Okay. And then, Mike, I was unclear as Dustin's doing this. The sentence below 1.3 required smoke alarms in dwelling units. Is that meant to be part? Where does that fit in the? No, we don't see it.
Let's see. You talking about page 2? Required smoke alarms in dwelling units R2 occupancies may be interconnected.
Yes, the two parts on the bottom of the page on the left that Dustin's showing right now.
Correct. Just bullet point those down.
Under smoke alarms.
No. Yeah, smoke alarms. You got it.
Okay. Okay.
It falls into the smoke alarm. So just like Chris was saying, and we were saying earlier,
Okay.
you've got a main fire alarm and an occupant notification deal. You have protection.
Yeah, oftentimes the reason why is oftentimes we co-locate
Station. smoke alarm.
within
So the fire code does deal with those.
right there.
I mean, I am of the opinion that those aren't necessary because they're covered by 907-211 and for the smoke alarm interconnection that could be interconnected. And then the habitable spaces with visual units, that's covered by 907-5 already. So, I mean, they can stay, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry. You deleted the reference to A117.1 in that second line under A there, where you've just highlighted there.
Did we want to keep that one?
Yeah, I think that's what Chris said.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm confused. I thought you just said that those sentences aren't necessary.
Yes.
Yeah, I that's what I did say. And if we do keep them, that A1171 should not be struck through. That was a mistake on my part.
Hey,
And then
Chris,
also
in the base language, what does it say for the interconnection to the building system? Because I think that might be our edit.
Yeah, because if you're following the 907-211, it allows for interconnection. And then the same thing with the visual notification on B. If you're following 907-5, that it covers that as well.
Yeah, so 907-211 listed in single multi-station smoke alarms complying with UL 217 shall be installed in accordance with 907-211-1 through 11.7 and FPA 72.
Yeah, go to the 11.7. That's the section you want to look at for the interconnection.
All right, cool deal. 11 and 7. I'm there now.
So I think
So
item
11.7,
10A
you're
and B could come
using,
out.
well, 11.7 is a little bit different. The way I interpret 11.7 is you're using smoke detectors in lieu of single and multi-station. So if I didn't want to put in a single and multi-station in an apartment, I could use building smoke detection within that unit instead.
Yeah, that's typically how we do that. We don't normally interconnect the standalone 120 volt smoke alarms with the fire alarm system, but we can replace them with a smoke detector that's interconnected with the fire alarm system.
Right. So in this case, what the 2 lines, the way I'm reading says, required smoke alarms in dwelling units may be interconnected. So if we're using single multi-station for in unit, the local jurisdiction has a choice. But if we go to 9.7 to 11.7, I have the option of using smoke detectors in lieu of smoke alarms, but in that case, it would be tied into the building system regardless for a general alarm. Right?
Yeah. The other thing is if that's intended for visual notification on a communication features unit, then you can, like the A1171 and ADA and whatnot, allow the interconnection of those single station smoke detectors with the fire alarm system, which you could use a relay for. We don't ever do that, but you could do that.
And I think for at least right now, and I'm sorry for the fire guys, I'm kind of speaking for you. I would leave the required smoke alarms in, and we can flesh that out over the next couple weeks or whatnot, and double verify.
That's kind of what I was going to say. Is it looks like we've come to an agreement, and I think we all need to kind of take a step back and look from a code language perspective. Are we doing what we need to do? John?
Yeah, another question for Mike, just real quickly, trying to remember what you said earlier. The word may there in item A, so you are allowed to interconnect the single stations with the fire alarm system. Is that intended to make that a jurisdiction option, or is that because the way this reads under code language, right? Ordinarily, this would say, well, if I want to do that as a builder, I can do that. And is it meant to just, again, make it more of a jurisdiction option, or is it going to be universally allowed?
Yeah, so it would be the jurisdiction's choice. On the fire side, some of our conversations we've had is the concern of a higher instance of fires that could be damaging to both life and property in these buildings. So there are some jurisdictions that may essentially fail safe and want everything to go to general alarm. And then you'll have other jurisdictions, and I'm going to tell you where I kind of stand on it, is I'm okay with that being a supervisory, like Chris was saying. And the great example that I think Patrick gave of I burnt my toast and, I'm going to deal with it before the whole building knows. But every jurisdiction does have a different risk profile and risk tolerance, and we did want to put that back with the locals to make that determination on what they want that first stage of alarm to look like.
Okay. Yeah, the way it's written right now, it makes it universal, and so I think we will need to wordsmith that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that it's up to the jurisdiction.
Yeah, and
Ardell?
we can add that in as authority having jurisdiction language. There's a lot of base instances of that.
Okay. Ardell?
I just wanted to offer to Dustin that item 8, the item that you have referenced in red, should just say in accordance with item 9. Is that correct, Chris? Where that reference is really referencing the smoke detection locations in item 9?
No, that second sentence should just go away in number 8, because you already, an automatic smoke detection system, that's already in number 9.
Yeah,
Well, that's what
that's
I
fine.
Yeah, that's
I
what you're
was
saying,
just
Ardell.
keeping the
That's what I offered earlier, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
So
I was keeping the language similar to like 90726 or 90728 that talks about a manual fire alarm station, but then also requires some automatic detection in specific locations. But the way it's reordered, I don't see that being an issue.
Chris, does the language in item 9 need to state an automatic smoke detection system that activates the occupant notification system? Do we need to add reference in item 9 now to activation of the occupant notification system? Does that make sense? So the sentence that just got deleted is worked into item 9.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I'm going to move that down and
Yep.
I agree.
And you
Great.
can copy
Awesome.
that from 907-282, an automatic smoke detection system that activates occupant notification system in accordance with yada, yada, yada.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
I think
But the concept that Rich talked about earlier, like that's the goal with all of this language, right? It's the visual alarm can be interconnected, single station or multi-station alarms show advisory, common spaces get automatic smoke detection that can trip the sprinklers. You got one manual alarm, unless you meet one of the exceptions. Actually, no, you always have one manual alarm. Isn't that the intent?
Yeah, and that's the reality of the built environment today. Other than non-sprinklered buildings, we're doing one pull station in the riser room.
Okay.
Yeah, the only correction I have, Ardella, is that the smoke alarms will trip the audible and visual alarms in the building, the occupant notification, not the sprinkler system.
Okay,
Sprinkler
thank you.
systems will always be heat activated. But otherwise you got it perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. I am looking back at the topic summary.
Does that cover line 6?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm looking at an old version, I think. I don't know. Yes, line 6.
Okay.
I think with final wordsmithing, we certainly need to double check. We've kind of done this on the run, but it sounds like we've arrived at.
I think the one thing that's not, and it's kind of tied to the item before it around sprinklers, is this exception is written around in item 8. That exception is written around having a full 13. I believe in the model code that it allows that exception if you have either a 13 or a 13R. In item 4, we've talked about allowing a 13R if it's a 4-story. So if we allow 13R per item 4, the question will be, do we need to go back to item 8A and include a reference to 13R?
Yes. So obviously we would need to amend this and add in 903.312 if we're allowing 13R systems in the building.
Great, thanks.
Would it be 903.3.111 and 112 or 112 or replace the 11?
It'd be
It would be
or
a,
with,
sorry, go ahead, Ardell. I didn't mean to step on
sorry, that was you. Apologize. Go ahead.
you. No, it would be the or based on item 4 where we determine what the sprinkler based requirement is for the building.
Gotcha.
Hey, Dustin, we have, I'm a little confused, the update schedule, you've got October 7th on a list of those documents, a list of those lines that I think are fire related. and exiting related, I believe. But
Yeah.
there are some lines down below that we have not addressed all the way down.
We just anything that doesn't have
Oh.
yellow down here, the second
I
column
gotcha.
is the date that we did discuss these
I gotcha.
topic. And so some of those dates are filled in because we did discuss them at these meetings, but we're re-raising them now.
Okay, all right. So do we want to go up to line item number 4 or 5? And make I mean, are we to the point where we need to start making yay or nay decisions?
I think that we're getting to that point, yes. In some of these locations, we're no longer working with the Wabo appendix in its format now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very close, but there's some new numbers in here, so I'll need to update these sections
Yeah.
before our next meeting.
So did we just, though, agree on line 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? On the summary sheet?
Oh,
I think that we had those because we kind of pulled out item A, item B, item C, item D.
I believe so. So like the lines here are no longer relevant to what we have in our baseline document. So we've
Right.
got new lines replacing them. So it'll be
Those should be resolved.
yeah.
Okay. So I would then suggest we also have Mike or the fire folks talk about row 11, 12, 13, 14. Professional fire department, which, remember, that language is in the legislation. It's not defined in the legislation, but it's there. So we had WSRB, but then we realized WSRB specifically states that they can't be used for code language. That was at our last meeting, I think. So have we had the time to address the professional fire department?
We have 6 items that we've talked about in the fire subcommittee. We
Okay.
do not have language prepared, but we do have the items that we can present, and we'd love to hear some group feedback on them.
Okay. Why don't we do that? Do you have it? You can share it, or?
Yeah, you can share Mike, or you can
It's
send it
really
to me.
just
And I
in an
can,
email form, nothing formal.
Email works. We don't need to be formal.
No worries then.
if you want to forward it off to me, I can pop it up, or I can stop sharing and you can share.
No, coming to you, Dustin.
Okay.
I'll make some of the plan reviewers jealous. I have a 49-inch screen, so you absolutely do not want me screen sharing. And then Dustin, when it pops in, you'll see professional fire department C below and just 6 bullet pointed items.
Okay. I'm still waiting on it, but I'm going to drop it into a blank document. There we go. All right.
All right, cool deal. So moving through, I'll kind of give a little background on professional fire department, where our minds are, and then really open discussion. to see what the group thinks and which way we go. And as we move through, I'll talk a little bit about standard of cover, how we respond, the tactics to respond to these buildings, our impression of what the response strategy is, both for the occupants and the fire department, and the different requirements that we'd like to pull in. So starting off on professional fire department as a whole, we understand that in this case, and please feel free to pop in if I'm under a different impression, but moving to a single exit, we kind of changed the response strategy for the occupants to where we're now moving from an evacuation response strategy from our occupants to more of a shelter in place. And that's knowing that the single exit could potentially become blocked or inoperable or whatnot. With it being a shelter in place and single exit, you shift the tactical responsibility now to the fire department to provide an aerial device or aerial ladder. Aerial ladders come in all shapes and sizes. So when we look at that, we also look at the type of ladder. So that kind of brings into the very first part is that the jurisdiction of where the single exits would be built, they have to have an aerial ladder truck of some sort. For the length of ladder, I'm working on some calculations right now to what it would have to be to meet, but we're thinking around a 100-foot ladder would reach the highest level being the 6th story of these buildings. So if you look at your ladders, they start at around 75 feet and they can go up to 135 feet in North America. But because of climbing angles, the angle you put on them right around 60 to 70 degrees, you lose some of that. So one of the examples that we use for ground ladders being a little bit easier, a 35-foot ground ladder gives you 30 feet of reach. Obviously, it becomes a lot different with more extension on your ladder. So moving up to 100 feet, we might be looking at 75 feet of reach with a 70-degree climbing angle and setback from the building. So first and foremost, the jurisdiction has to have a ladder truck. Using the Grenfell Tower example, we're shifting responsibility to the fire department to where they're now your secondary means of egress. Number 2 is staffing for a ladder truck. Unfortunately, and WSRB would agree on this, having a truck in a station that is unstaffed does absolutely nothing for the response. So we do have to ensure that the ladder truck is able to make it to the scene to provide rescue, and minimum staff is available for the operation of that truck. In this case, a bare minimum skeleton staff is 3 firefighters. That gives you a driver, that gives you a ladder operator, and that gives you a firefighter on the aerial device. Next up is water supply, and this is where we start bringing in some of our appendices. And the reason why we name them is these are appendices that are only enforceable if they're adopted by the local jurisdiction. So in this case, by this appendices being out there, the referenced appendices would by reference become adopted as the base code or standard. Base code for water supply is Appendix B. There is not a jurisdiction in the state of Washington that I'm aware of that doesn't currently already use Appendix B. So it's an easy fallback for determining water flow. Appendix C covers your distribution and number of fire hydrants. So how they're spaced around the building, how many are required based on GPM or your gallons per minute water flow. Already there, we're bringing that in now as our recommended base code. One of the sections we wouldn't mind having some input on in particular is fire apparatus access. So our state is fairly unique in the fact that roadways and fire apparatus access is deleted out of the state's base code, and that's section 503. It is deleted. So it's up to the local jurisdiction, each city, town, county, to determine what their access looks like. I'm really fortunate. My jurisdictions have adopted back in by reference Fire Code Appendix 5 or Fire Code 503 and adopted Appendix D. So you have the Fire Code Section 503 that sets up minimum width of 20 feet and capable of holding so much weight, and gives a lot of authority to the local fire code official. But then Appendix D comes back and is very specific in those requirements. And something we're really aiming at in Appendix D is aerial apparatus access, to where now that minimum 20-foot roadway becomes a minimum 26-foot roadway. And that's recognition that when a ladder truck sets up, it's no longer just the 8-foot truck. you now have 4 feet of outriggers on each side. So the 8-foot truck becomes 16 foot. It accounts for the above ground water main we set up. So the big yellow hose that's 4 or 5 inches. It recognizes that we need 3 feet ish in there for that as well. And then finally, the appendices recognizes that we need to bring emergency vehicles in and also evacuate occupants if needed, get them out of the way. So it accounts for a travel lane. So there's a lot of stuff in Appendix D that's really important. And then finally, there was something that I wasn't aware of until I think, Roger, you hit on it, that they ask about inspections. So we put in a line item saying that the local jurisdiction does need some type of fire prevention bureau, and following, in this case, WSRB's minimum standard that fire safety inspections need to be conducted on the building at least every 3 years. And when it comes to fire safety inspections, what a fire marshal's office does, we operate what I like calling trust but verify. So we trust the building owner is getting all their systems serviced and keeping them in, but we're verifying at a minimum every 3 years, going on site, making sure the sprinkler system has been serviced, the fire alarm system has been serviced, exits are clear, exit lights work, emergency lighting works, any other systems in the building are working properly. So that's the quick down and dirty, and just really open up before we start formalizing language for the group.
Okay. Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. Are these provisions proposed to be included directly in the appendix, or would this be like a companion document that identifies the cities that, or identifies the qualifications that cities would need in order to adopt the appendix? I guess I'm kind of confused about where this fits in the documents that we're preparing.
Gotcha. So great question, Spencer. When we originally got this last year and we worked together with, WASM worked together with WABO to develop the initial proposal, we were under the impression that this appendices would be an optional adoption by all cities. And in that case, we wrote guiding language. So to your point, it would have been guiding language. If the intent is for this to be an appendice that is pre-approved or assumed to be adopted, then these are prescriptive requirements that would be written in. And again, that kind of goes back to my Grenfell Tower analogy of where additional requirements are being placed on the fire department to help these occupants in the event of an emergency.
And Spencer, I would also go back, and it's possible that I have this mixed up with the multiplex. I don't think so, though. We are creating an appendix, but there is direct language from the code that allows anybody in the state to use this appendix. It does not need to be specifically adopted by a municipality. I believe that's the language we have for the single exit.
Yep, and that would be the difference between an advisory statement of the local jurisdiction before they adopt it at the city council or county council level versus prescriptive and thou shalt.
Marcus, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I think we're in the same pool of question. I was trying to figure out if this is basically saying to do the appendix or to have these buildings, you need these 6 items. And if it's an appendix that people are choosing to adopt, then you're adding an extra layer on top of that. Because the first one for me, it was like, this is an appendix and you're thinking about kind of all the larger cities in the state of Washington, how many of them have an aerial ladder truck that can do 100 feet type of thing? And are you basically is number one automatically just maybe currently already eliminating a lot of the large jurisdictions in the state?
No, and in fact, I can answer that one really easily. And I know I've got some Seattle friends on here and they can talk a little bit more. My jurisdiction is certainly not a Seattle, but we do have 3 aerial devices, all of them being 110 feet. I'm also an East Coast firefighter. I came out of a metropolitan city very akin to Seattle. In fact, for my Seattle friends, city of Raleigh may ring a bell with them for tillers. City of Raleigh, we had tillers all at 110 feet. And I do believe the common that's being ordered now, especially on your stick ladder, is around 110 feet. When you get into your other types of ladders, for example, the platforms that you find in more flat top commercial areas, they start around 102 feet and continue up. Very rarely do you see the 75-foot ladder that I kind of alluded to before. Most cities, counties, whoever it may be, are moving more towards your heavy duty ladders to where they're 100-foot plus. The 100-ish, and forgive my informal language on that in the email, but it really is just trying to calculate what that sixth floor looks like and what that minimum reach would be to effectively rescue off the sixth floor.
Did that answer your question, Marcus?
Okay, yeah, I think so. So basically, Mike, you're saying that you feel most of the larger jurisdictions in the state that would already have zoning or allow for like buildings of this height have fire trucks that could meet this standard.
Yeah, correct. And just got it from Rich, who's down in Redmond. Kind of standard on a tiller ladder, which you find in your downtown urban environments, is 110 foot. So that's not. It's more for our smaller departments that might be running the 75-foot quint that they bought in 1995, to where they may really want to consider of whether or not they're capable of doing that 5th or 6th floor rescue.
And I'll just chime right in because it's on the
Go ahead, Derek.
same question line. Like if I'm building a 4-story, but I don't have a 100-foot ladder, can we just say that must have an aerial ladder of sufficient length to reach the top versus putting a mount on there?
Yeah, absolutely, Derek. And in fact, that's where the ish came from when I was originally putting this out to the fire group. And we can certainly do the sufficient length. And I would agree with you that if the local fire department has an aerial device capable of effecting rescue off of whatever height that building may be, 4, 5, or 6 stories, that we would have no issue with it. The risk would be mitigated.
Yep. Perfect. I just don't want a code stipulation like, oh, sorry, you don't have a 100-footer. Well, you're out. You're trying to build a 4-story and or something, 5-story.
I agree with that. And I have a related question. Sorry, Richard, I'll get to you next. Mike, does the ladder have to reach the roof? You're talking about the fire department providing the second form of egress. Is that just that it has to reach the 6th floor?
It would have to reach.
True.
So the
I
way
said
we would
roof,
write
but
that
yeah,
as far
here's
as the
the door.
recommendation would be to reach the highest occupied floor. So
Yeah,
the same way we look at determining high-rise requirements or whatnot. So if it roof decks, for example, has come up, as long as it can reach the roof deck, the highest occupied floor, then we're good. The reality is these 100 foots definitely get it. To Derek's point, and anyone else who wants to do a 4-story, then you're overkill, and you might be able to get with a 75-foot stick.
Okay, great. Richard, go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, Mike, so with these items that are talking about the IFC appendix items B, C, and D, is the intent to adopt those appendices or just comply with the specific requirements spelled out here that are in those appendix items?
Your second statement's accurate. It would be to comply with the requirements of Appendix B, C, and D for the single exit only. For anything more than single exit, it would be up to the local jurisdiction to adopt those appendices wholesale for unilateral enforcement.
Do you think we need to say something like full adoption of these appendix items is not required, or do people think that's not you think it's clear currently?
So really good code language, and there's some better code writers in here. I would imagine, or it would be my interpretation, that if this is a choice appendice and the appendice is not adopted, then by reference, there would be no reason to enforce B, C, or D, and then vice versa. If the appendice is adopted by the local jurisdiction and we're referencing appendice B, C, and D, then the code language for appendices would allow for the enforcement of those. And that's really how, and I forgot exactly which section it is in Chapter 1, Scope and Administration. Appendices are not enforceable unless specifically adopted. And in this case, adoption of the single exit would be adoption of those appendices for this situation.
Well, but Mike, I want to go back. My understanding, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, is this is going to be adopted statewide. Anybody across the state can build a 6-story singles exit stair by using this appendix. We're pulling the appendix just to separate the language so that we don't have to go in and start completely rewriting the code and messing up some other piece of the code to make it fit. So with the single exit, the intent is there's going to be one change, and I think that that's in the proposal, one change, maybe chapter 1 or 2 or 3, I'm not exactly sure, that says you can build a 6-story single exit if you do it according to appendix, whatever the letter is. Appendix
Gotcha.
Q.
So in this case, it's a pre-adopted appendice. That's
Right.
what I'm getting. So in
Yes.
that case, to go back, and I think it was Marcus that asked, these would be prescriptive requirements when finalized for the local's jurisdiction.
Okay. Ken, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, I was just wondering, did couple different things. Did you discuss on aerial ladder if you guys would accept automatic aid or mutual aid? And then second, I know you brought up the 26-foot width for aerial, but did you talk about the proximity to building and bring that up to anybody in the group? That
Yeah.
requirement?
Yeah, so when it goes to Appendix D, your proximity to building, the 15 to 30 feet is already part of that appendice, so that would be enforceable with the reference to Appendix D. And we have talked about mutual and auto aid on those ladders. One of the issues that we're kind of running into with mutual and automatic aid is the actual availability of the aid and the proximity to the building. So coming just north of you, I can talk about Lake Stevens. We use in our North Battalion, Marysville, and City of Everett. 9 times out of 10, when we call out for ladder 63, or I think it's ladder 1, ladder 2, they're out of service. So even though we have them on a run card and it's validated they're on a run card through WSRB and SNOCOM, they're typically not available to respond. So that's one of the things we're kind of running into on the automatic and mutual aid. Definitely open to more discussion and anything else on that. And we could even ride it to the point to where it's up to the local fire official or even fire chief to make that determination. But we do know the intent at the end of the day is to have a ladder on scene to effect rescue when needed.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the people that are trying to look at this on paper, like Spencer is probably going, what does this look like? That proximity to building just means that that road, that 26-foot wide road, has to be no closer than 15 feet to the building and no further away than 30 feet from the building. So there's your setback requirements for that road, for that apparatus to get set up. Plus, they're not supposed to have any overhead utility lines also for that aerial apparatus. So this is another condition that's in that D105 section. Just want to make sure everybody understands what's in that D105. So when you're planning to go forward with it.
Okay, Rich.
I think Ken brings up a really good point on that Appendix D. And when we look at both B, C, and D, or all 3 of those, these are minimum code requirements. So some jurisdictions, some smaller jurisdictions in the state may not do a local adoption process, just because that can be fairly onerous. And so I think this does have a really good consensus minimum code for things about water hydrant location and the fire apparatus access. And it does still give that local jurisdiction the ability to be more restrictive. I know we don't follow Appendix C or D because our local requirements are more restrictive, as are most jurisdictions that have a robust fire prevention division that do code adoption and all that sort of stuff. We do follow the Appendix B because it does provide a nice uniformity throughout the state for the developers to do. So.
Okay, Spencer.
Yeah, I guess a few more questions. Just thinking through logistically how this would work in plan review. So does the building official then have to consult with fire districts to confirm that they meet these requirements? What happens if you're in a county, for example, that has multiple fire districts? And then what happens when things change over time? I guess I don't know how common it is to require this interplay between fire department capabilities and building code requirements. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
And I might add, I've been thinking about when to put this out there, but I remember as some of the conversations on the council over the last 4 years, that Appendix D and IFC 503, I think, are not adopted because those are planning. Those are done by planning codes, not building codes. And I kind of feel like we are crossing into that. And then, to be honest, even the last item, which is the inspection, I don't know that the building code has the authority to require inspection. So I am not sure about either number 5 or number 6, just from I don't know. I have some concerns about it.
My understanding on 503 and Section D for at least the last 20 years is the state typically does not adopt it because in some of the very rural areas of the state, providing a paved fire department, fire apparatus access road within 150 feet of all portions of the first floor of the structure can be onerous if you're in rural Washington, but in most of the urban areas it's fine. So they're leaving that really up to the local jurisdiction to determine what is adequate access. It's really not a planning issue per se. At least that's been my experience.
Thank you, Dustin.
Yeah, so that's why I raised my hand, is to broach this topic of this RCW 1927060. So looking at some different RCWs, we don't adopt the Uniform Fire Code anymore. We adopt the International Fire Code. So I have a question, I think, for Dirk loaded, which is, does this particular standard still apply to the works of the SBCC? But I do believe that this is the reason that 503 is specifically amended out of the fire code. And it may just be something that's tradition. I looked into this while the discussion was going on. This has been on the books since 1985. And this may just be a holdout, something that's not necessarily as good for the state as we could possibly get. But I think we are maybe precluded from including provisions for roadways in this appendix, even if it is an optional. The local jurisdictions can still adopt those provisions, but it's at that local level that has to occur. And so if we include those provisions in this appendix, I'm not sure if we would be running afoul of this particular statute.
Okay. Can you put that on our list to run that question by, Dirk?
Yes.
Okay. Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, just gonna add to this same topic. I think if currently it's a local jurisdiction call to do this, it seems I'm concerned about then adding in a requirement for a specific special type of building to do something different from other buildings that the jurisdiction might say has different standards. So yeah, number 5 is, as others have just said, concerning one for me.
D. Lynham.
David Lynham, I'll
David.
help out a little bit on this one. These buildings are very different than any other building that we're building on there. We're making a special concession, if you will, to build this type of occupancy. And in doing so, the legislature has said you have to have a professional fire department. So we're defining something. They didn't include what a professional fire department is. So what we're doing here is attempting to define what that is. And as far as access and the fire flow and the water supply, they aren't so much zoning. They're not really planning documents because they are incorporated together in everything that we do. So we kind of have to address this systemically. Because it's going to affect the zoning. It's going to affect the roads. It's going to affect the building construction. And I think what Mike's presented here today is this is the minimum. This is the minimum things that a professional fire department has. And if this is a rural area of the Washington, I've got some. I'm a county fire marshal. And I've got some in my county that are very rural. You're not going to build this kind of thing there. This is going to get built in the areas where you have the densities to requirement. You probably wouldn't be allowed to build this in a rural residential, or maybe some of the other zones like this. It's going to be in an urban high density type of a thing. Maybe the urban low, but most likely the urban high. So you're going to have road standards. Most of the time, they're going to be served by public roads with requirements that are beyond what this is. But in those instances, which we're seeing a lot of these coming in now, people are electing to say, no, I'm not going to build a road standard. I'm going to call this a private road. Or once you leave that public road, you're now on a private access way. And that's particularly where the fire code comes into play, and particularly where we need to include these kinds of things. So it's, yes, they may not be strictly building construction that's on there. If we want to have some reference documents to take you back to the other way, they are a new animal, and we have to do, the whole thing is just really wonky about a professional fire department. And I know that we'll all get beat up about it when we go on, because if you want to go tell any volunteer fire department in the state that they're not professionals, you better be able to run fast. But there you go.
Thank you. So I've been wanting to maybe throw this out there. Patrick and Jeremy, go ahead, and then I want to show. I'll have Colin, Patrick, and Jeremy, and then I wanted to show some research that I found here this afternoon. Go ahead, Patrick.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to read again the requirement in 1927 for this technical advisory group in 115. It just says the recommendations must include considerations for adequate and available water supply, the presence and response time of professional fire department, and any other provisions necessary to ensure public health, safety, and general welfare. So it doesn't say that you have to prohibit these types of buildings if there's not a professional fire department or, so forth. I think the recommendations that Mike brought up today are scaled back a bit from ones that are before, and I think there's good positive room there. I'd like if, since it's not like defined code language yet, if we looked for areas to where we focused more on scaling the limitations based off the ability of the response of the fire department, instead of saying, you have to have 100-foot ladder, or and I think they were kind of talking about this before, but like, okay, if you have a 75-foot ladder, then you can build up to this many stories. If you have this size of ladder, then you can go to this many stories. I feel like that will allow smaller jurisdictions to still use the bulk of this appendix based off their ability, without completely precluding them from using all of it if they just don't meet one of those categories. And I appreciate what Dustin brought up. Want to make sure that, and I understand this is kind of a new area, we're trying to figure it out, but making sure whatever the recommendations we come up with apply with other laws and requirements and make sure it fits within the code. So thank you.
Jeremy?
Yeah, thank you. Just with regards to the fire apparatus access, I think that my opinion is it makes a little more sense to have that fire apparatus access as approved by the jurisdiction, or as approved by the code official or the fire code official, or however we want to word that, because like for instance here, we don't adopt 503, but we have our own fire department design standards that our fire marshal plan reviews for. And in those standards, there's flexibility for him to make decisions on a case-by-case basis. Because of our topography in the rolling hills of the Palouse, there's different situations. So I would encourage us to think about that. Yes, the apparatus access is important. It's a valid point. It probably needs to be in there in some shape and form, but maybe it could be more an approved fire apparatus access specific to the jurisdiction. Thanks.
I like that idea. So Spencer, I'm just I would like to show something. Dustin.
My comment is just a very quick response to
Okay,
say
go ahead.
I think the city of Spokane, we adopt certain sections of 503, but not all of them. So I think that comment is very important, because it's a little unclear what would happen in our case if we haven't adopted the entire section.
Yeah. Okay. So can I share, Dustin?
Yeah, if you press the button, it'll probably send me a prompt to
And
let you.
I'm on my laptop. I only have one screen, so it might take me a minute to get to what I am wanting to show. I believe it's this one. So are you seeing summary of bill?
I'm seeing it load up right now. And
Okay.
yes, I'm seeing that.
All right, so what I did, and I was asked kind of not necessarily around this topic, but to go back and listen to the recording when we started talking about limiting it to R1 apartments. And I dug back in. I went to the very first Senate bill report for this particular SB 5491. Now, I know that this is not what was passed, and for sure, the language in the RCW is what we have to adhere to. But I was kind of interested to read the background and some of the information, the summary of the bill when it was first introduced by the sponsors, which I think does play to what was the intent of the legislation that was introduced. And it was interesting to me, and I'm sorry, I'm struggling here with my single screen. Oops. Are you still seeing do you still see the summary of bill?
Still seeing it. Yep.
Okay, good. So it was interesting. The legislative body or county or city may adopt amendments to the SBC to allow for multifamily residential buildings to be served by a single stair exit under certain conditions, including but not limited to. So building has no more than 5 stories and the building does not have more than 6 stories above grade. I think that plays to the conversation we had about the 5 stories are served by the single exit, but the ground floor, you can have a ground floor that has another exiting. The building does not contain a boarding house, which does play into the conversation that was brought up by Shweta about including all R2s except boarding houses. So a topic for discussion later. The building does not have more than 4 dwellings on any floor. So that my whole point about allowing for 5 or 6 units on a 4-story maybe doesn't match that. The 1 hour with sprinklers, I mean, I'll read it. The building is constructed with not less than 1 hour fire resistant construction and is equipped with an automatic sprinkler system in accordance with the IBC. And residential type sprinklers must be used in all habitable spaces in each dwelling unit. There are no more than 2 single exit stairway conditions on the same property for buildings 4 stories tall or higher. So we've been talking about, can we allow 2 of these? That was a discussion in the initial bill. An exterior stairway or interior exit stairway is provided. And then it does talk about a city that intends to adopt amendments to allow for single stair exits under certain conditions must meet the following criteria. The city is served by a municipal fire department or fire district, and the city does not have a current restriction on development due to lack of fire flow capacity. The city may determine it does not have appropriate fire apparatus or hydrant networks to serve single stairwell buildings. So again, we don't take that language as we need to adhere to the RCW that was actually passed, because it went through a whole lot of discussion of the legislature, and what came out of the legislature was the actual bill. But if we start thinking about what the intent was of the sponsors of the bill, I think it can inform a little bit of our conversation. So with that, I don't remember if somebody else had their hand up. What I'm kind of thinking we need to do, well, I'm not sure. I don't want to force my opinions, I think, on moving forward, other than we've had some conversation. I think we need to get it into some code language, into the document, into the appendices. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong. We need to, if you are building according to Appendix Q or whatever it is, the municipality has to have these criteria. And maybe this is the first item, I don't know. I like the idea of keeping it as generic as possible. And And I think I like the idea of giving it to, you know, the fire marshal determines they have the equipment necessary to reach the top occupied floor, something along those lines. But I'm kind of thinking we've talked about it. There certainly are various opinions about it. What I think we should do before we really start going too much farther is get some wording that is consensus wording, or an approach that we think best meets the conversations that we've had today, and really start talking about exact language. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, so first off, just wanted to say to the group, thank you for the feedback. It was incredibly helpful listening to everybody and all the different viewpoints for the professional fire department. Roger, for you, can I get a copy of your bill summary? Because that would be incredibly helpful as we craft language that meets the intent of the summary.
You can, yeah, I found it online, but yes, I can send it to Dustin. He can send it out for sure.
Perfect. No, thank you. That'd be really helpful. And then we can make sure that we're meeting the summary of the bill as we craft that language for each individual item.
Yeah, Mike, I do want to caution. I mean, you know, that was all introduced. What came out of the legislature was the RCW. So not everything came out of it. And maybe there were good reasons for that. I'm not sure. That kind of goes beyond my knowledge. You may be able to track the various versions of it I mean, it is public record. It's out there. I was able to pull the first one up. But yes, I can get you that one. And then
cool deal.
I think, Mike, if you've heard the language. I think John or Ken, somebody with better code knowledge than me, does it seem appropriate? We've been directed to qualify a professional fire department according to the RCW. Does it make the most sense for us just to have an introduction or something that if you're going to build these, you have to have these criteria? And then we can come up with the criteria.
Well, that's a loaded question. So NFPA, you know, they do have a 1720 standard, and I don't know, Mike, if your group looked through that or not. And it talks about, you know, volunteer and paid departments and response times and number of personnel and all that. But as far as trying to come up with the criteria for who is going to determine which jurisdiction meets those certain criteria, I just don't think there's anything written down that and that's why everybody was leaning to WSRB. That was the only thing that we had in the state that was consistent throughout. So now, without being able to use that, I don't know what to use. I just don't know. I don't know how to write the code language to be able to meet the intent of that bill. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and Ken, I'll pop in with you a little bit on this one. So we did look at 1710, which is professional paid fire departments. 1720, as you mentioned, is volunteer fire departments. And even for the one line that talks about a prevention program, you have NFPA 1730 that covers professional standards for prevention bureaus. So we have considered each of those standards, and I want to flip it just a little bit to the Commission on Fire Accreditation International. We're actually into what we call a standard of cover question, and it goes far beyond WSRB to a lot of the points that you just made. But what we're trying to do is take a community risk assessment standard of cover and break it down to very simple bullet point items to make sure that a new risk introduced to the community can be mitigated by the local emergency response force.
Okay. John, do you have anything to add? Sorry.
Yeah, only since you asked me. It makes sense to have something. I mean, if we're gonna say, you know, you have to have certain characteristics, or your fire department has to meet certain requirements, you got to say that somewhere. Now, how you say it, where you say it is a real big question, but if we're going to limit, if there's a large enough concern that you need these certain things in order to be able to have these single exit buildings, then yeah, you got to say it somewhere.
Jeremy?
Yeah, and just to follow up with what John said, I agree. If we've got to do it, it needs to be said somewhere. And like you said, Roger, maybe somewhere in the beginning. And I'm going off of memory here, but doesn't the beginning of this appendix say that we shall allow construction of these buildings in accordance with this appendix? Because it's going to be a mandatory appendix, so it needs to be allowed in jurisdictions. So if that's the case, maybe the right place for it is in that beginning paragraph where it says it shall be allowed in these jurisdictions in accordance with this appendix. When the following professional fire department criteria based on these guidelines in the bullet points, because it's not an adopted authoritative reference standard or anything. It's basically criteria and guidelines as decided by the local fire code official. Is there a way to put that into the beginning charging statement of this appendix?
I think that that's what we need to attempt to do. And I think it will be challenging, and I think that that's the path we've got to take. So Mike, are you comfortable trying to figure out at least, I guess I would ask you to kind of dig into the document. Dustin, if you can pull it up or share, you're not sharing at this point.
Oh, I've been thinking I've been sharing for a long time.
And go up to the beginning of the draft doc. Yeah, I mean, whether it is in the user note, I'm not sure if it goes in the user note or if it goes item 1 under 101.1 general. Item 1 becomes you need to meet these fire. So just think about it, and let's see if we can't try to get the information that you have on the left talking about, or contemplating the conversations that we've had and everybody's talked about today, and see if we can't put it into language in that appendix. John?
Yeah, I think you have to put it in as an item in the provisions, not in the user note. User note is basically commentary and not enforceable.
Yeah. So it needs to be 101.1 item 1. I don't remember. I've not. So
I mean, or you could put it in as a separate section,
or a separate section. That's what. Is there 101.2? I don't remember. I've not looked.
No.
Yeah, it's really just 101.1. But maybe that is 101.1 becomes the fire.
Yeah.
The fire stuff, and 101.2 is the general, and we talk about everything else.
Yeah.
So, Mike, you have a question. I'm going to say, I'm going to suggest to you that we do a separate section that in here that is here are the requirements for the professional fire department and the water flow.
Yep, no, absolutely. So we'll go back and recraft some language. I did want to just call to everybody's attention, since you have the Appendix Q reshared. There is a language that we did attempt when we thought this was going to be an optional appendice, beginning with the capabilities of and resources available to the responding fire and emergency service agency. So that was our first brush at trying to define what a professional fire department looks like. But that was also under the impression that the appendice was optional for the local jurisdiction to adopt and use.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I am going to suggest that we pause for till 4 o'clock. No, 3 o'clock. I'm on East Coast, so I'm trying to do math. Pause till 3 o'clock, and then we will dig back into our summary and see if we can't knock off a few other items. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. We will see everybody in a few minutes. Hello. Is everybody back? Anybody who's not back, let us know.
No, we're gone till 4 o'clock. I was chuckling. I turned to my brother and I said, yeah, we're on break till 4 o'clock. I'm like, wait, that's what Roger just said, but he's on the East Coast.
I know. We have another hour left, as far as I know.
Right. Same here.
All right. I was looking, where did it go from my screen? So I was looking at the items that we had scheduled to be discussed October 7th that we haven't. There are a list of items that we said could be discussed either October 7th or November 18th, which is our next single exit meeting. A number of things like storage room on the floor, trash chutes, trash access. I don't think we want to get into those, but the things that are left on October 7th are sprinkler requirements. I think whether we determine NFPA 13 or 13R, there's 101. Oh, does the fourth, yeah, the fourth, fifth, and sixth stories need work. I had, we're going to end up tabling the fire department, so there's some rows there. Stairway width and EERO access to yards. So I think what I would like to bring back up is the sprinkler requirements, if we could. Which is road number 4, is that right? And I think that row 4 and 5 are together. And there are sprinkler people here that are much more knowledgeable than I, but what I recall from the notes and from what I recall, the code, after going through, we understood that the code for levels 1, 2, if you had a 1, 2, or 3 story, you would do a 13R. However, that probably would not be under this appendix anyway. So the appendix really is for 4, 5, and 6 stories. 5 and 6 stories would require a 13 anyway under the current code. So the question for the group is, do we require a 13 if you build a 4th story? Or do you require, or do we allow a 13R to go up to the 4th story? And if there's anybody that knows sprinklers a lot better than I, if you could confirm, or do I have it right, or am I mistaken?
No, there we go. You're right, Roger. So 13R is typically allowed up to 4 stories or 60 feet. The request from fire, I believe, is going to be 13, full 13 system. And that's the trade-off to the single stair and additional water flow that you get from a 13 system. 13R is a 0.05 water flow per head. A 13 system light hazard is a 0.1. So it's an additional water flow to help extinguish the fire and keep it under control.
So whatever language, and I think that this is both row 4 and 5 on the summary. And this is keeping track of one of the enhancements that this tag suggests is if you're building under this appendix for a 4, 5, or 6 story, you're going to have to use a 13. And really the enhancement is that 4th level would go from a 13R to a 13. I think that I've summarized that correctly. Marcus, go ahead.
Does Mike and anybody else, does the water flow consideration, does it take into account, or is it taking into account not only the height of the building, but just like the general footprint of the building? Like, so for instance, these are going to be typically a smaller footprint building, even though they're going up to 4 stories. And so I could see a situation where like the water flow at 13R is seemingly appropriate for a building this size, especially if it's appropriate for a 14 or sorry a 4-story building that has 2 stairwells that is larger and has more units and takes up more it has a larger footprint. I guess that's just the question I have. Not necessarily one way or the other, but just does water flow take into account both the footprint of the building and the height of the building?
So the systems are a little bit different. First off, on footprint, we actually use what's called design area to calculate the coverage of a system. That's used for 13R and 13. 13D is the only one that does not use a design area in the traditional sense. 13R systems are the only ones that are really called out that are height and height restrictive. Other than that, you can use the 13R or 13D systems based on occupancy. So that's the other place where it kind of differentiates as to where traditional environment, we're building regular apartments, 13R system for 4 stories up to 60 feet in height is totally appropriate. So kind of a convoluted answer, but yes, we do to an extent look at size or footprint of building, but it's done based on design area. And then 13Rs by code or by standard NFPA 13R specifically limit them to 4 stories in height or 60 feet.
Okay. And so just as a follow-up, Mike, to that, so basically the reason why fire is kind of requesting this enhancement is mostly tied to the single, like it's just the loss of exit, even though the amount of people or like the number of people in a 4-story building of this size would be significantly less than like a typical 4-story building.
Yeah, correct. And you summed it up beautifully right there. It's the loss of the secondary exit. So when we take away that one exit, we're relying more on the building systems. So in this case, it could potentially be that shelter in place scenario like I was talking about earlier. So with the double water flow, we have a better instance of actually extinguishing the fire than just keeping it in an incipient phase or possibility to grow. And that's what we're looking for. If we're truly losing an exit and we're going to shelter in place response strategy for the occupants of the building, we want the additional water flow.
Yeah, that answers my questions. Thanks.
I have a related question, Mike, and it does Marcus's question. I remember as we were starting to talk about 5 or 6 units rather than just limiting it to 4. If I were to look at a 4-story double exit building, you could have, I'm going to throw out 40 units on a floor. And I don't know what that number is, but you could have a bunch of many units, many more than 4, right? With a double exit and a corridor. And including, you could have from the stair to the end of a corridor, you could go 20 or 25 feet, possibly have you could by code have 3, I'm going to just suggest that you could have 4 units whose only access is from a dead end corridor to the stair in that double corridor scenario. Are you following me?
Yeah, I think so. And especially as you go down the dead end corridor route, we already have existing language in chapter 10 that deals with corridors and limits the length of those corridors pretty significantly to mitigate any type of a dead end hazard.
And is that 20 feet or 25? I
would have to go back and look. So in all honesty, when I do a plan review, I typically have my fire code open.
Okay.
And as I'm checking boxes, I'm referring back. Talk to a fire marshal, you're going to get answer of definite maybe every time.
Yeah. So my point being, if you kind of take from the stair, I'm going to say from a stair, and if I had a plan, I could point this out, but from a stair to the north, there's a dead end corridor of 20 feet or whatever the code allows. South of the stair, there's a corridor and a whole bunch of units, but you're saying that there's a fire right there at the, right where the stair starts. So you have, or at that stair, so you have potentially 4 units whose only access from the corridor is that single stair. And you're saying that, and in that condition, you would have those 4 units on 4 floors that would have a 13R sprinkler system. And I'm not sure if that is different. If there was language written in there that if you're building a 4-story under Appendix Q, you could use a 13R. If you're building a 5 or 6-story, you have to use 13. I think that's an alternate option, I guess. And I think I could be persuaded both ways. So I don't know, Dustin.
So I have tangential information from Chris Russell. He had to leave at 2:25, and he had gathered some information on the cost for installing 13 versus 13R systems.
Okay.
And so put up on screen here, he's got some information from More Fire saying that 13R sprinklers cost around $4 per square foot. And NFPA 13 sprinklers cost the same as the 13R for the habitable spaces, but add another $5 per square foot for attic coverage. And I believe this sentence here kind of belongs at the end, but depending on the square footage, it adds between 50,000 and 200,000 for the increase in cost of that attic dry system. And then from another Wolf Fire, we had a 100-unit 4-story apartment with NFPA 13R needing 7 sprinklers per units, and then an NFPA 13 10 sprinklers per unit, and the cost difference is around 20% increase for NFPA 13. And I wish Chris was here to be able to talk more or take questions, because I don't have any information to back up this data here.
Okay. And I'm sorry, is it David Lynham?
Yes, David Lynham, thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
there's 100 different ways that we can design these buildings. We can design them with a flat roof. We don't have an attic anymore. There's a lot of flat roofs in my jurisdiction that do it. We have requirements for the 20-foot exit for dead end corridors. We have maximum travel distance for sprinkled and unsprinkled types of buildings. But what the real thing that we are most concerned about is the time it's going to take you to exit, and the time for the fire departments to get to be able to respond to these things. You don't have time in a fire situation. So everything that we do, we add another story on there. It increases the time it takes them to get out. There's a single exit instead of 2. So now you have a queuing question of people having to queue up for different exits that are on there. And you have the delayed response of the fire department up to potentially the 4th, 5th, and 6th floors. So, we can come up with designs, and I don't think we want to get a code that doesn't give you any wiggle room from a local authority to be able to change things or address issues. But that's what's so critical to us, and that's why we're looking for the trade-off. So you have an increased density. I mean, you put more water out to handle any fire situation, and sprinkler systems aren't really intended to put the fire out. They do most of the time, but they hold it in check while the people get out and the suppression folks to get there and put the fire out. So that's the alternative. That's the exchange that we think is really appropriate to give up for the fire and life safety of those buildings. If we're going to cut out that exit, we've got to have a more dense water supply until we can do something about it. Okay.
Fair enough. And I am not questioning if you're going to build a 5 or 6-story that you need 13. That makes total sense to me. And actually I think that that's in the current code. It is, if you're going to build a 4-story and so if that is an enhancement that the tag feels is important, then I think that's the way we can go.
Roger.
It'll be less. Yeah.
Just adding to that and going back to what the legislative group told you to, or told us to pay attention to, not taking away anything from what we just heard, but if we look at their knowledge and skill set and expertise as legislators, not lumping them all into it, but using kind of a stereotypical approach, and they use the term residential sprinkler systems. If we look at the intent of that, I think in my mind, that is a 13D system when they use the term residential sprinklers. But that's not to take away from what we just heard from the fire folks.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, you're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
They don't know the difference between the two. But even in a 13, if you're putting a 13 in these buildings, you're using the residential quick response sprinklers in those living spaces, just like you are in the 13R. So we kind of have to interpret a little bit, like you said, what they may have meant, because you're right, they don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to, I feel like this is an item that we should make a motion and have an official vote on it, because I think there are people that think both ways. And I guess I'm not sure the best way to do it. I think that there would be, trying to think.
Hey, Dustin, I got a suggestion. Pull up a blank sheet and let's get a motion on the table. No, just and a couple options, and we can beat it up and discuss the options that way.
Where I think, Derek, the options we have are, if you're going to build according to Appendix Q, you have to use 13R. That's one option. And that directs people, if it's for levels 4, 5, and 6, and you have to use 13R.
Yeah.
Option B, and this is the one that I kind of keep going back and forth, and I'm not sure that I support option B, but if you're building 5 and 6 story, you have to use 13R. If you're building what's 13, right? Yep. Correct. Thank you. And if you're building a 4-story, you can use 13R.
Ardell, help us out. You got a lot of experience.
Yes, please do.
I'm confused, Roger, with the proposal, the first proposal. So did you just suggest that there's that you're allowing 13R for 5 and 6?
No, I misspoke. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I was corrected. It's 13 on the top one, Dustin.
Thank you.
So I think those are the two options, and I'm Spencer, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I'm wondering if I feel like maybe we've talked about this. Can somebody remind me, are there sprinkler requirements currently on a single stair that is 3 stories?
Yes.
It would be allowed to use a 13R.
Okay, 13R would be required in that case. Got it.
And that's why I've only addressed 4, 5, and 6, because I'm assuming if you're going to build a single exit at 3 stories, it's already covered by code.
Yeah, and I'll make it even easier, especially since Spencer brought it up. In the Fire and Building Codes, Chapter 9, residential occupancy type is required to be sprinklered.
Here's another random thought. What if the first 4 floors are 13R and then you put an increased heads on the upper stories?
That's option B.
Oh, you're combining systems in the same building?
No, but if you go up to above 4 stories, you're kicked into the NFPA 13 system.
Yeah, that's for the whole building. We don't have a standard for mixed systems. It's either one or the other.
I think that was brought up in our previous conversation, and
yeah,
from a cost perspective, you're going to do one or the other. Rich, go ahead.
In my local jurisdiction, we don't allow 13R systems. So where 13R systems are required, we do full 13s. So I think when we do this, we may want to give the local jurisdiction, because this is going to be in the IBC, not in the IRC, the option to require that higher level of standard.
I think that having that option might be an issue because you'll still need to get SBCC approval for making those options. It'd be nice to make this just one-stop shop. Jurisdictions use it.
Spencer, go ahead.
So would that, I'm thinking through how that could read. Could it just say single exits up to 4 stories must use NFPA 13R? Or how would that, how could we allow for jurisdictions that don't allow 13R? Could we say something like
How about just say may use?
May use NFPA 13R, or sprinklers are required. Single exits up to 4 stories may use NFPA 13R where authorized by the local jurisdiction. 5 to 6 story shall use NFPA 13D. Does that address that comment?
I think so.
That jurisdiction that doesn't allow 13R, would they in a 4-story just do a 13D, or do they go straight? No, he said it. They go straight to 13.
Straight to 13. Yeah, because 13D is just 1 and 2 family residential.
Right.
Right.
And I think that the what you said is correct, except it's not 13D. The 5 and 6 story must use NFPA 13. If you're building a 5 or 6 story building. Ardell, go ahead.
The way this is written into the code change proposal is that there's a line item that states that the building must be sprinkled per NFPA 13, full 13. Dustin, if you can scroll down on the right-hand side, please. So I think, thank you. That's item 7. So because the base code still applies, you have I think conceptually that should be voted on whether it's option A or B. As far as the language and how you address it in the code change, the option is to do as was suggested, as stated in option B, or if you struck item 7 altogether, then it would default back to the base code language, which is just chapter 9, and it says if I've got a 4-story building, I can use 13R. If I've got a 5 or 6-story building, then I'm already in a full 13 for the R occupancy. So I think again, does that
Ardell, how does the
make
base
sense?
code? How does the base code deal with a municipality that doesn't allow 13R?
Then that municipality would have it as their own local amendment. And again, there's no additional thing coming out of the single exit provisions. If a local jurisdiction only will accept a full 13, then if you have item 7 as written, there's no conflict.
Okay.
Right? They're always going to get a full 13. If you want to allow 13R for the jurisdictions that accept it, then all you need to do for a code change in this WABA proposal is strike item 7.
Okay.
And then it goes back to whatever the local requires.
All right, Ken.
Yeah, I don't know if this group, Ardell, had you guys brought up the E2424, the 27 code change proposal that allows 13R for R2 occupancies up to 4 stories or 3 stories an occupied roof, but then they had the parameter that they had to add sprinkler heads at each landing in a stairwell. Did anybody in this group bring up that so we know what the 27 language is going to be for single exits?
And I don't think that we should be working off the 27 code for this.
I understand that, but I
discussion
just
here.
know if that was brought up as a discussion point for at all regarding.
Yeah, it was, Ken. And it was right back to what Ardell said, just we're going to look at it based on existing code as best as
Okay.
possible. And then when we do a revision next cycle, then we'll adjust it then.
Got it. All right, thanks.
Mike?
Yep, and just adding to that, one of the specifics that came up as a conflict was the addition of the NFPA standard. So the 27 code would be based off of the 25 NFPA 13 series, 13, 13, or 13D. So it wouldn't align with what the state's adoption of the 24 series would be.
Okay, Spencer, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so are we looking for a motion? I'd be happy to move
Yes.
that we strike section 7, which would have the effect of applying an FPA 13R up to 4 stories and NFPA 13 at 5 and 6 stories.
Okay, which would be option B. So there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Derek seconds it. So we're going to have allow for any other conversation people would like to have, and then we will go through a what? A not a voice vote.
A roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Thank you. Rich, go ahead.
I suggest instead of striking that, do we just say shall be sprinkled in accordance with chapter 9 or section 903? So it still requires the sprinklers. It just kicks you back to chapter 9 for the requirements.
I believe
That also
that
works.
in accordance with chapter 9.
Chapter 903.
Yeah, section 903.
All right, Spencer, you made the motion.
Yeah, I'll take that as a friendly amendment. I think if that has the same effect, I'm fine with just saying section 903 and leaving it at that.
Okay. John.
Okay, I don't think we want to. If we're going to go down this road, I would prefer that we just strike the language, because now you're again starting to reproduce things that are redundant, and then it becomes that whole question. We've already said in the beginning that the whole code applies unless we amend it, unless we change it here in the appendix. And when you start adding in things that are redundant, then it starts begging the question, well, they included this, but they didn't include this other thing. So, was there some intentionality behind that? And you do get a lot of confusion out of that. I think it's much cleaner if we go down this road that you just delete it.
Okay. Can I ask a question? If it is deleted, it still will have to be sprinkled.
Yes.
According to the base code. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let Spencer, it's your motion.
Yeah, I think we'll just go with my original motion in light of that comment. So to strike section 7.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Dustin, I'm just going to ask you to be careful about calling for the primary first,
Yep.
and then secondary if they're not here. So let's go ahead and have a vote.
Andy Lorenz. I'm not seeing still in the room. David Kinley. Not seeing in the room. So let me do two things while I'm doing this. I'm gonna do this as a roll call and roll call. Okay. Jeremy Moore. Not seen in the room. Mike, no, sorry.
We had 29, we're down to 20 people.
Mike Messer.
Nay.
Rich Geisky.
Nay.
Spencer Gardner.
Aye.
Derek Weigel.
Aye.
Richard Williams.
Nay.
John Sue.
Nay.
Spencer, it's not looking good.
So with that, we do have a quorum and that motion does not carry.
All right. And I am actually going to suggest that we no longer have to have a motion to actually approve it because it is written in our document that you have to use 13R. Right, so option A is actually in our current document.
A full 13.
A full 13, yes, sorry. Thank you, John. Okay. Thank you all. That's our first vote. Great discussion. Appreciate it. And I, again, I keep telling myself I need to start making notes, but eventually as we present this, we're going to have to talk about what enhancements we did. And this, and that's one. And I'll have to explain that it's current code could potentially allow 13R for 4 stories. We thought, the tag thought that it was important that it was a 13 for 4, 5, and 6 because of the single exit. So that's an enhancement, certainly a reasonable enhancement in my mind. All right. What do we got? Half an hour. What's next on the list?
Do we want to mark the 13 as decided on this?
Yes.
Okay.
On the topic summary decided, and in fact, I guess in the comments, I would say vote, actually put the vote and the vote total
okay.
in the comments, the date that it was voted on, and so the professional fire department, I've got my own one. So the next two that we've talked about addressing are the stairway width and the EERO. I know I could probably come up with those stand for the access to the side yard. So let's I am going to, this is probably dangerous, but from my now 64-year-old brain, I remember that we were in general understanding that the stairway widths per the base code were acceptable. There was some question about the firefighter response times and firefighters going up while occupants come down, if that is a question or concern. I felt like we talked about the general number of occupants because we are limiting the number of units to, right now it is 4 times 6, actually 4 times 5, so there are 20 units. That most people felt like the base code, the issue of people coming up and firefighters going up and people coming down was not a concern, but I think we flagged it to just have some time for people to think about it again. So I'll open it up for a conversation. I think that right now the proposal does not change the stairwell. So it'd just be the code stairway width.
That's correct.
And so I am just gonna, if there is somebody who feels like we should somehow enhance the stairway width, I'll leave that open. Put that out on the table. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe the base code currently handles this building appropriately. The number of occupants, the occupant load is handled currently by the base code. I don't believe we need to enhance it further.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm going to suggest, I don't know that there aren't folks suggesting that we should, so I'm going to suggest that we make that
Per code.
Per code, and we resolved it today. So, somebody remind me what EERO, emergency
escape and rescue openings.
Thank you. Could somebody, I don't want to count on my memory for this one. Can somebody frame that question or concern that we had?
Yeah, Mike's got it.
Okay.
So back to the ERO, typically base code only requires them to up to the third story. And if you go into the ICC commentary, that's based off of our 35-foot maximum ground ladder to a 30-foot. Again, go into the single stair, the idea of putting the ERO or the larger windows on stories 4, 5, and 6 is to allow the or the aerial device to get people out as their secondary means of escape.
So going back to the WABO proposal, that would be item, sorry, I just had it, item 17. And well, the new number was item 19. And in the WABO discussion, it was the same one that you're going to have here in a few minutes, which is the model code does, again, imagine or is based on that ladder, the single exit with the lack of redundancy. As discussed at WABO, we decided to extend it to all sleeping rooms on all floors. So this would be up to 4, 5, and 6, where in the model code, we would only have to provide it up to the 3rd floor. So
Makes
this does
sense
add
to me.
cost.
Yeah, we got it doesn't cost much, and we got the fire trucks with a tall enough ladder.
We have not finalized the fire trucks at the ladder. I think there was general consensus. We're just trying to figure out the language.
Right.
And I also think that again, this is my personal opinion, it seems like a reasonable. I think we would be questioned if we didn't include that. Why would you not include that?
We got some thumbs up.
For full disclosure, then the why would you not, Seattle currently does not include that requirement. So the assumption is you're taking the stair up to higher levels. And I'm not going to speak on behalf of the fire folks. Ken is on the call. If you want to add
What
comment
about
there.
life safety of people falling out of those windows?
I'm not going to touch either of those topics.
So Ardell, can you just explain to me that you're saying in a 2 exit scenario?
In a 2 exit scenario, those buildings do not have emergency escape and rescue openings above the 3rd floor.
And that's because you could go up, if your corridor was blocked, you could go up the stair, go out the corridor, down the corridor, and go down the other stair. Is that what you said?
No, that's not what I said. I said that they're not required in a 2 exit building above the 3rd floor. That is there's probably some code history here that there's others on the call that will probably understand that better. But the assumption that you'll be using that EERO above those higher floors is, I guess, there's an access issue. First off with the ladder, and certainly still on Seattle lots with getting the truck to a back to access any one of those rear, say you had a rear access on one of those sleeping rooms on the parcel, you're still not going to get that ladder truck there. So you're coming off of there's other, approaches to this in New York. They have it where you have to have that access on the EERO on the street facing side, because that's where you will be able to access with the ladder. So what is not tied to this is how does that truck get to those EEROs?
Right. John?
Yeah, that was a little bit of discussion that we had during the WABO discussions as well. But real quickly to answer Derek's question about people falling out of windows, there are now requirements for latches and things for if the windows are within a certain distance of the floor, you have to have latches that can easily be opened, but they don't ordinarily allow people to get through them. That I'll just put it that way. It's a little complicated. But as far as the history, yeah, there were questions about whether, if you're in a side yard or backyard, could what kind of ladder are you going to be using? And it's more likely to be a hand ladder, the 35-foot. So, does it make a difference to have the larger window? I think was what we talked about way back when in Seattle. Yeah, so I think that's one of the issues. The other one is, as far as escaping goes, people won't use it if they're for escape by themselves, unless they've got one of those portable ladder things or whatever. They're not going to use it above the third story, was what we've been told from just a psychological standpoint. So that's kind of where we left it, I think, in Seattle.
Okay, Richard.
This is a question to the fire group on here, if they're willing to answer. So if we're talking about requiring a ladder truck, or preference for a ladder truck for fire departments, what are they going to be accessing? So what part of the building, if we don't have EEROs, how would they gain access to the building? Are we talking about just breaking windows? I guess I'm not clear about how you would go about doing it.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no problem, Richard. So the ERO is a larger window and it's accessible to the occupants on the inside. So it typically has a lower profile, but larger window for the ladder to access. The operational side's pretty easy. Our ladder pulls up, stages appropriately, and our ERO is typically going to be on the aerial apparatus access side of the building. And there's more code that goes into determining that. But the aerial ladder just pulls up and sticks the ladder literally right in the window. You mentioned breaking windows, and the reality is we have no problem breaking them to get in or trying to open them from the outside if they're unlocked, or if an occupant's already unlocked it and opened it up.
Gotcha.
I think John or someone on here already hit the window falls. Just on the prevention side of the house, window falls are an issue, but it's irregardless of whether or not it's an ERO window or a window in a 1 and 2 family. Unfortunately, folks open their windows in the summer, especially without air conditioning, and the screens that are in there are designed to keep bugs out, not kids in, and that's what we see on our EMS responses. So that's irregardless of this. One of the last things, and this is something that Ardell brought up, and I certainly understand where she's coming from. It needs to be known Seattle has its own fire code and has for numerous years. So while I really appreciate the base language that single exit has come out of, we're now setting a standard for the rest of the state that follows the state's legislation and international fire code. So when we talk about these buildings, Seattle already has them existing on what I would call a non-conforming fire apparatus access road or aerial apparatus access road, where in my community and all the others that this would affect have the opportunity to make those roads usable for an aerial device as part of this or local ordinance on the back end, to where aerial ladders would be able to access ERO above the third story. So while I totally understand the environment that they're living in downtown Seattle and the more urbanized area where it's been happening since the 80s, I believe, from her explanation of single exit, the rest of the state's in a different boat to where we're now have a starting point of 2025, 2026, and an opportunity to make the ERs usable. So I hope that kind of answers the questions that were just posed, and maybe a little perspective too of who this is actually affecting.
Hey, Mike, can I ask a question though?
Yes, sir.
When we've talked about the, previously we had the discussion about the ladder trucks. You're not, I don't believe you are anticipating that you're going to have ladder truck access to all four sides of this building. Is that correct?
No, and Appendix D does not require aerial apparatus access to all.
So as far as getting access in or getting people out, John said, which I believe, that people are not going to jump out of a 5th or 6th story window. I don't believe. So allowing fire access through an EERO to get people out makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to force people to put the window in if there's no chance that a fire truck is ever going to be able to get to it, because then the only reason you're adding that cost is to think that people could potentially jump out. And I wouldn't think that that would make sense. So I'm kind of leaning toward what Ardell suggested that New York does, that if you on a side of a building that you have access, then you have to put the EEROs all the way up.
Yeah,
but
and I would be a proponent with you on that. And that was actually in one of our versions to where EERO was only required from the designated aerial apparatus access side.
Okay.
So that's not where the proposal is today. I am definitely a proponent for putting it back there for the points that you and others have just made. If there's no aerial access provided, then I would not have the expectation that a ladder truck could access the window.
Okay. Ardell, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that again, these are all valid reasons to there's just different options here. Do you just for ease have it everywhere, right? And then there's not this extra coordination of like, well, now I have to go as a designer, verify with the fire department, what's my access point, right? And so that was part of the how we landed. And well, conservatively, we'll put it on all floors, on all elevations where there's a sleeping room, and then and that's how we landed here. So I just wanted to offer that back as how we landed with this option.
Okay. Ken?
And I agree with Ardell. It's much more simpler just to require it for all of these locations. As much as we can debate laddering the building, you have to allow the occupant the ability to purchase their own ladder, which I have done for my daughter for her apartment complex, where she can attach it and climb out, regardless if they have the setback requirement great enough to put a ladder up for firefighters, but you can have a ladder for the person to escape. For us not to put in those windows and have that poor person having to break out a fixed window, it would be much more difficult. So I think it's the right thing to do. Just put them in. And then again, there's no coordination effort and allows the occupant to purchase something themselves. So they're not jumping, but they can actually climb out and go down a ladder, which they purchase. Thanks.
Okay. Good point. Anybody else?
If they're on the 4th or 5th floor, they're gonna have to buy a couple of those ladders to join together.
Oh, they make them long enough. I have one for a 4-story building.
Remind me right now in the proposal, you have to have them everywhere, right?
Yes.
All sleeping rooms?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good with that. I make a motion if we got to vote on it, or if anybody has any objections, leave it as is.
Yeah, I think we don't have to vote on it if we're leaving it as is.
Got it.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're done, I think it sounds like we're sort of done with that item, but I think the notation that I'm looking at in the issue sheet talks about access to the yard, and not sure if that's kind of a related point, but not exactly whether you. Okay, so now that we have the EEROs, presumably they have to have access to a yard or something. And then the question is, do you have to be able to get out of that yard to the street? I think that's maybe what this was about, but I don't know.
Dustin, you're gonna have to correct me. There was a conversation about the side yard.
Yeah, I mean, it's there in the title for this topic. I don't think that we fully got into it all the way to really talk about all the side yard part of it. It really kind of talked about whether or not the ERO was required in the first place.
Okay. Ardell?
I sort of hinted at it earlier. It's such opening, the language in 1031-2-1 for EEROs is that such openings shall open directly into a public way or to a yard or court that opens to a public way. And there's no explicit requirements on what, on having, again, and this is the same as stated earlier, on having the fire aerial apparatus access to every elevation. And if we're okay with that, based on the last discussion, then this item would be resolved and we would just accept that there may be some EERO that are not accessible by the fire aerial apparatus, but that doesn't preclude someone from purchasing their own ladder or wanting to and being able to self-evacuate if they needed to.
Okay. Well, I am going to ask anybody would like to make a motion to modify it. And if not, then I'm going to suggest that we call it resolved and that they're required everywhere. And it would be per item number, what is it now, 19? Yeah.
Roger.
Yeah.
And pardon me, but maybe I should get a little clarity on what size that EERO is. I'm just assuming it's just like any other, it's a net free clear area of X by X, with no minimum smaller than 20 inches. Is that correct for the fire people? Or is there a technical, like it's got to be extra big to handle larger volumes of people?
John?
Yeah, Derek, there are dimensions in the code. I think it's 20 inch wide, 24 inches high, and 5.7 square feet, which.
Oh, perfect. So it's the same size. It's not anything like extra big, like you're going to put in a,
No. That's
3
the
feet wider.
standard.
Yeah. No, this is a piece of cake. We do it all the time. Yeah. Yep.
Dustin, just as a note, item 19 refers to 1030 right now, section 1030. At least in my version of 24 code, that's 1031.
Okay. All right. Another issue resolved. So let's see, we've got 7 minutes. I'm not sure that we're going to get into the, I'm going to suggest that we call it a day as far as the summary log. I know a lot of the storage room, trash chute, trash access, all of those questions are somewhat related, and I think we will have a pretty good list on November 18th, which is the next time we're going to be talking about single exit. So come to that meeting ready to discuss those. I will, so Dustin, you're going to redo the, update this document and get that posted so everybody can take a look at it. The professional fire department is going to get added to the 11/18 deadline meeting. And we have the new question or concern, or somebody brought up that they don't want to limit it to type R2 apartments only, but it's any R2 apartment dwelling units except, what is it now? Boarding houses. So I would ask people to think about that. There's in the documents for today's meeting, there was that modification. sleeping units. I think it's row 32 down there, right?
Yep.
So that document is in there, so people think about that, and we'll try to address that on November 18th. I am just going to say I missed the second half of the full council meeting last time. What I understand is there was conversation about moving the deadline for the next code from November 1st of 26 to May 1st of 27. Although we are also hoping to get some, part of the reason for that is a requirement for the codes to sit through the legislature. And there is a possibility that we might get some legislative help to still allow us to get the 24 codes in as of November 1st, 2026. So I'm just going to say that to suggest we need to keep trying to push on the current schedule that we have, which is basically for this group to adopt both the single exit and the multiplex by December 31st. If as over the next couple months, we think that that can stretch, that's fine. But I think for all of us, we would prefer to just get through this. I think we're close on both of them. So we'll see how things go over the next month or two, and hopefully we can be resolved by the end of December. So we'll stick to the current schedule. All right. Unless I hear any other questions or concerns, I'm going to close the meeting. And
I
give you
make the
free.
motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Derek. We'll see
All right, thank you.
everybody. See everybody in I think 2 weeks to talk about the multiplex.
Yep.
Perfect.
Thanks everybody for the
Thanks.
time.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks
Have a
all.
good week.